What the reason was. I think relatives often do find it difficult. I remember when I filmed Isadora Duncan.
For Vanessa Redgrave, desire was never about flirtation, glamour, or fleeting passion. It was about conviction. Throughout her life, she has been drawn to people who could match her intensity of thought, her moral seriousness, and her refusal to live quietly. To be close to Vanessa Redgrave meant far more than sharing a bed. It meant sharing ideas, values, and the courage to stand alone. Unlike many stars of her generation, Vanessa did not separate love from purpose. She was attracted to men who challenged her intellect, fueled her political fire, or embodied artistic authority. These were not casual fascinations. They were deep, consuming connections that shaped the course of her life, her activism, and her art. Tonight, we are not exploring gossip or romantic myths. We are examining 6 individuals who stirred something profound in Vanessa Redgrave figures who represented passion, ideology, power, and commitment. Together, they reveal how desire, when guided by principle rather than fantasy, becomes one of the most defining forces in a person's life. Number 1. Franco Nero. For Franco Nero, attraction was never loud, rushed, or performative. His presence in Vanessa Redgrave's life represented something rare in her world: steadiness. Where she burned with ideology, intellect, and relentless emotional intensity, Franco offered calm strength. He did not compete with her convictions, nor did he try to contain them. He stood beside them. Their relationship unfolded over decades, marked by separation, reunion, and endurance, rather than constant proximity. That longevity matters. Vanessa was drawn to Franco not because he dazzled her, but because he grounded her. His masculinity was quiet, distinctly European, rooted in loyalty rather than dominance. For a woman accustomed to ideological battles and public scrutiny, that kind of presence carried undeniable appeal. What made Franco Nero especially significant was his refusal to reduce Vanessa to her fame or her politics. He accepted the whole woman, the actress, the activist, the mother, the dissenter. Desire here was not about conquest, but about trust. To sleep with someone, in Vanessa's world, meant being able to rest without surrendering identity. Franco gave her that space. For mature audiences, this connection feels deeply familiar. Over time, attraction often evolves into recognition, the realization that peace can be as seductive as passion. Franco Nero was not a distraction in Vanessa Redgrave's life. He was the constant she returned to when everything else was in motion. Number 2. Harold Pinter. If Franco Nero represented emotional stability, Harold Pinter embodied intellectual combustion. Pinter's mind was sharp, confrontational, and unafraid of silence. His language cut deeply, often saying more in what was withheld than what was spoken. For Vanessa Redgrave, this was irresistible. Their relationship existed in a space where words mattered intensely. Conversations were not casual. They were battlegrounds of thought. Vanessa was drawn to men who could challenge her ideologically and artistically, and Pinter did so relentlessly. He questioned assumptions, provoked discomfort, and demanded clarity. Desire here was mental, the hunger to engage with someone who refused to soften ideas for comfort. This was not a safe attraction. It was charged with tension, disagreement, and emotional risk. Yet for Vanessa, safety was never the goal. She was drawn to intensity because it mirrored her own inner life. With Pinter, intimacy meant exposure, revealing beliefs, doubts, and contradictions without protection. For viewers over 50, this dynamic resonates as a truth learned through experience. Some relationships exist not to soothe, but to sharpen. Pinter represented the man who could keep pace with Vanessa's intellect, even when that pace became exhausting. Desire here was inseparable from struggle, from the belief that closeness requires honesty, even when honesty hurts. Harold Pinter was not a refuge. He was a mirror, one that reflected Vanessa Redgrave's uncompromising relationship with truth. Number 3. Tony Richardson. With Tony Richardson, desire took the form of creative chaos. Richardson was a force of motion, restless, visionary, and emotionally volatile. As a director and as Vanessa's husband, he brought fire into her life, the kind that fuels artistic breakthroughs but often scorches everything nearby. Vanessa was drawn to Tony's daring. He challenged convention, disrupted norms, and believed cinema should provoke rather than reassure. That rebellious energy aligned with Vanessa's own refusal to conform. Their connection was intense, passionate, and deeply entwined with work. Love, art, and ambition blurred into one. But this attraction came at a cost. Richardson's unpredictability created instability, and Vanessa often bore the emotional weight of that imbalance. Yet even in conflict, she remained drawn to him. Desire here was bound to creation, the belief that something extraordinary could emerge from disorder. For older audiences, this relationship reflects a familiar lesson. Not all passion is sustainable. Some loves burn brightly because they consume energy rather than preserve it. Tony Richardson represented the phase of Vanessa Redgrave's life, where desire was inseparable from risk. In these first three figures, Franco Nero, Harold Pinter, and Tony Richardson, we see the foundation of Vanessa Redgrave's private world. Desire, for her, was never casual. It was a commitment to intensity, intellect, and purpose forces that shaped not only her relationships, but the woman she chose to become. Number 4. Laurence Olivier. For Vanessa Redgrave, attraction did not always arrive through intimacy or romance. Sometimes, it came in the form of awe. Laurence Olivier represented the highest authority in British theatre, a man whose presence alone could define a generation of performance. To Vanessa, he was not merely a legend, he was a standard. Olivier embodied discipline, mastery, and an almost intimidating command of language and form. For a young actress raised in the shadow of great theatrical tradition, his influence was profound. Vanessa was drawn to the seriousness with which he approached art. There was no indulgence, no softness in his expectations. Excellence was demanded, not negotiated. The attraction here was not sexual in any conventional sense. It was aspirational. Vanessa longed to be seen by Olivier, not as a prodigy or a curiosity, but as an equal. To be close to him meant entering a space where talent was tested without mercy. That challenge stirred something deeply personal, the desire to prove herself worthy of standing among giants. For mature audiences, this dynamic feels familiar. At certain points in life, attraction is not about comfort or affection, but about recognition. Olivier symbolized the figure whose approval mattered because it could not be easily earned. In his presence, Vanessa confronted her own ambition at its highest level. This form of desire, the hunger to be validated by excellence, shaped her identity as an artist. Olivier was not someone she wished to possess, but someone she needed to measure herself against. That need carried its own quiet intensity. Number 5. Michael Redgrave. A formative presence. Any honest exploration of Vanessa Redgrave's inner life must acknowledge the influence of Michael Redgrave, her father. This is not a story of romantic attraction, but of emotional imprint. The men Vanessa would later feel drawn to were shaped, consciously or not, by the standard he set. Michael Redgrave was a towering figure in British theatre, intellectual, principled, and deeply serious about his craft. He lived by discipline and moral responsibility, values that became embedded in Vanessa from childhood. His presence established the baseline of what authority, integrity, and artistic commitment looked like. Vanessa learned early that intimacy was inseparable from intellect. Conversation mattered. Ideas mattered. Silence carried weight. Her father's influence created an internal compass that guided her attractions toward men who possessed depth rather than charm. She was never impressed by surface confidence alone. She looked for substance, the kind that endures. For audiences over 50, this recognition feels instinctive. Our earliest relationships shape our expectations in ways we don't always see clearly until much later. Michael Redgrave's role in Vanessa's life explains why she gravitated toward men who challenged her mind, demanded seriousness, and refused emotional shortcuts. This was not desire in the physical sense, but it was foundational. It defined what closeness meant to her. To sleep with someone, emotionally speaking, required trust, respect, and shared gravity. Those criteria were formed long before adulthood. The man of shared conviction, unnamed. The final figure in Vanessa Redgrave's private constellation has no famous name, and that absence is intentional. Throughout her life, Vanessa has been drawn to people who share her political courage and moral urgency. Activists, thinkers, and companions who were willing to stand beside her when conviction came at a cost. This attraction is not about celebrity or status. It is about alignment. To be close to Vanessa Redgrave means to accept a life shaped by protest, controversy, and unwavering principle. The unnamed presence represents those who walked with her through political storms, who shared her outrage, her compassion, and her refusal to remain silent. Desire here is ideological. It is the intimacy of shared risk. Sleeping beside someone who understands your values and is willing to defend them creates a bond that transcends romance. For Vanessa, this kind of closeness mattered deeply. It allowed her to remain whole in a world that often tried to isolate her for her beliefs. Older viewers recognize this truth. With time, attraction often shifts away from novelty and toward solidarity. The unnamed figure symbolizes the partner who does not ask you to soften your convictions for the sake of peace. Instead, they help you carry them. In this final form of desire, Vanessa Redgrave reveals who she ultimately is. A woman whose deepest attractions are rooted in purpose. To share a life and a bed with her is to share responsibility for the world as she sees it. In the end, this story was never about scandal or romantic fantasy. It was about how Vanessa Redgrave experienced desire as a woman who refused to separate love from meaning. The 6 figures in her life do not form a list of conquests, but a map of values, stability, intellect, creative fire, artistic authority, moral inheritance, and shared conviction. What makes Vanessa Redgrave so compelling to audiences over 50 is that her attractions mirror the way desire matures with time. She was never drawn to surface charm or easy passion. She was drawn to people who could stand beside her without asking her to be quieter, softer, or less committed. Intimacy, for her, meant recognition being seen fully, without compromise. As life progresses, many come to understand this truth. Desire stops being about escape and becomes about alignment. It asks not, "Who excites me?" but "Who can walk with me when the cost is high?" Vanessa Redgrave answered that question repeatedly, even when it led her into conflict, loss, or isolation. If this journey resonated with you, you're not alone. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Which connection did you find most meaningful? Passion, intellect, or shared belief? Stay with us as we continue exploring the inner lives of remarkable women who chose principle over comfort and depth over illusion.